The speed of light. You learned it as a fact. 299,792 kilometers per second. Absolute. Fixed. The universal speed limit. Here's the problem. The universe breaks it constantly, and it doesn't need your permission. Right now, two galaxies on opposite ends of the observable universe are moving away from each other faster than light. Not because they're traveling through space that fast, because the space between them is expanding. Space itself has no speed limit. Only objects moving through space do. You cannot catch those galaxies. Ever. Light from them will never reach you. They are already gone, not because they moved away, but because the gap between you grew faster than anything in physics is allowed to travel. That is not a theory. That is the measured reality of the universe you live in. Logic said nothing beats light. So the universe said, watch this. Quantum entanglement. Two particles, separated by any distance. Measure one, the other responds. Instantly. Not fast. Instantly. Faster than any signal could travel between them. Einstein called it spooky action at a distance. He hated it. He spent years trying to prove it was wrong. He failed. Every experiment since has confirmed it. The universe is non-local. Two things separated by the width of the galaxy can be correlated in ways that have no physical explanation involving signals or causality. Here's what that actually means. Information, or something that behaves like information, moves between those two particles with zero travel time. No signal, no medium, no delay. Your logic says that's impossible because must precede effect. Something cannot respond before it receives a message. The universe says it already did. We use quantum entanglement in quantum computers right now. It is not philosophical. It is operational, and we still do not understand how it works. Time dilation. Time is not a constant. You were told it was. It isn't. The faster you move, the slower your time runs relative to someone stationary. This is not a perception effect. This is not an illusion. Atomic clocks on airplanes tick measurably slower than clocks on the ground. GPS satellites run on slightly different time than Earth's surface. Engineers had to correct for it, or navigation would drift by kilometers per day. Here's the version that breaks logic completely. If you traveled at 99.9% of the speed of light for what felt like 1 year to you, roughly 22 years would pass on Earth. You would land younger than your own children. Not metaphorically, biologically. And gravity does it too. A clock at sea level ticks slower than a clock on a mountaintop. You age faster at higher altitude. The difference is tiny, nanoseconds per day. But it is real, measurable, and confirmed. Time runs at different speeds in different parts of the universe simultaneously. There is no universal now. There is no single moment that is the present for everyone everywhere. Your logic built a world with synchronized clocks. The universe never agreed to that. The double slit experiment. Fire a single electron at a barrier with two slits. It goes through both at the same time. Not one or the other, both. We know this because of the interference pattern it leaves on the detector behind. An interference pattern requires a wave. A wave requires the particle to have gone through both slits simultaneously. We confirm this by firing electrons one at a time, individual particles, and watching the interference pattern build up over time. Here's where logic fully collapses. If you place a detector at one of the slits to observe which slit the electron actually goes through, the interference pattern disappears. The particle stops behaving like a wave and starts behaving like a particle. Just because you looked, the act of observation changes the outcome. Not because the detector physically disturbs the electron, because information about the electron's path now exists. And that information, its mere existence, collapses the wave function. Reality is not determined until it is observed. Before measurement, the electron exists in a superposition of both paths simultaneously. Measurement forces a choice. Your logic says a particle goes through one slit or the other. The universe says not until you check. Hawking radiation. Black holes evaporate. A black hole is a region where gravity is so extreme that nothing, not matter, not light, can escape. The escape velocity exceeds the speed of light. By definition, nothing gets out. Except it does. Slowly. Via quantum mechanics. Here's how. Empty space is not empty. At the quantum level, pairs of virtual particles constantly pop into existence and annihilate each other, borrowing energy from the vacuum and returning it almost immediately. At the edge of a black hole's event horizon, one particle falls in before annihilation can happen. The other escapes. The black hole loses a tiny amount of mass. Over trillions of years, it radiates away entirely. Here's the logic violation. The black hole loses mass from particles that originate outside it. Nothing crossed the event horizon outward. The black hole shrinks anyway. Energy is extracted from the gravitational field itself via quantum processes that classical physics says cannot happen. A region of space from which nothing can escape is slowly being drained by particles that were never inside it. Stephen Hawking published this in 1974. The physics community initially laughed. Then the math held. Then everyone stopped laughing. The Casimir effect. Two metal plates. Place them close together in a vacuum, closer than a micron. They attract each other. There is nothing between them. No gas, no field, no medium. A vacuum. By every classical definition, there is nothing there to cause a force. Here's why it happens. The quantum vacuum is not empty. It seethes with virtual particles and fluctuating energy fields. Between the plates, only certain wavelengths of virtual photons fit. Outside the plates, all wavelengths are allowed. The pressure outside is higher than the pressure inside. The plates are pushed together by the vacuum itself. This is not theoretical. This is a measured, reproducible laboratory result. The force is real. It has been precisely quantified. It matches quantum field theory predictions to extraordinary accuracy. The vacuum exerts pressure. Nothing pushes things together. Your logic has no category for this. The universe does not care. Quantum tunneling. A particle hits a wall. The wall is, by all classical measures, impenetrable. The particle does not have enough energy to cross it. Logic says it bounces back. It goes through, not around, not over, through. The particle's quantum wave function extends into the barrier, and there is a non-zero probability it appears on the other side. This probability decreases with barrier thickness, but it never reaches zero. Here's where this stops being abstract. The sun runs on quantum tunneling. Protons in the solar core do not have enough thermal energy to overcome electrostatic repulsion and fuse. By classical physics, the sun should not be able to fuse hydrogen. It should be cold and dark. But quantum tunneling allows protons to pass through the energy barrier with a small but non-zero probability. Multiply that small probability by the 10 to the power of 57 protons in the sun, and you get a fusion rate sufficient to power a star for 10 billion years. Every second the sun shines, it is doing something your logic says is impossible. Has been doing it for 4.6 billion years. We'll keep doing it for another 5 billion. Entropy and the arrow of time. The laws of physics are time symmetric. The equations that govern particles work equally well forward and backward in time. Run the physics of two billiard balls colliding in reverse. It looks completely valid. Nothing in the math forbids it. So why does time have a direction? Why does a broken egg never reassemble? Why does heat flow from hot to cold and never spontaneously reverse? Why do we remember the past and not the future? The answer is entropy. The second law of thermodynamics says total entropy, disorder, in a closed system always increases. A broken egg has more possible arrangements than a whole egg. The overwhelming probability is disorder. Order is statistical exception. Chaos is statistical default. Here's the logic failure. The second law is not a fundamental law of physics. It is a statistical observation. There is no equation that forbids a broken egg from reassembling. The probability is just so absurdly low, so astronomically unlikely that we treat it as impossible. But treat it as impossible is not the same as impossible. Somewhere in the universe right now, entropy locally decreases by chance. A broken thing becomes briefly less broken. The arrow of time points forward only because the universe started in an extraordinarily low entropy state at the Big Bang and is still trending toward maximum disorder. Time's direction is not law. It is a consequence of probability. The universe began very ordered. It is becoming less ordered. We live in the middle of that process and call it the present. The flatness problem. The universe is geometrically flat. We measured it. The curvature of space on the largest scales is zero, or so close to zero we cannot detect a difference. Here's why that violates everything logical about initial conditions. For the universe to be flat today, 13.8 billion years after the Big Bang, it must have been flat at the moment of the Big Bang to 1 part in 10 to the power of 60. That is not a rough estimate. That is the precision required. If the initial density had deviated from the critical density by even 0.00000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000whthat no structure could ever form. We exist. That no structure could ever form. We exist. Therefore, the initial conditions were set with that precision. Nobody knows why. Your logic says things happen for reasons. Fine-tuning to one part in 10 to the 60 has a reason. The universe has not offered one. The leading explanation is cosmic inflation, a period of exponential expansion in the first fraction of a second after the Big Bang that flattened whatever geometry existed before it. But what caused inflation? What determined when it stopped? Unknown. The answer to why the universe is flat is a mechanism whose own origin remains unexplained. You are made of the rarest arrangement. The atoms in your body were forged in stellar cores, scattered in supernova explosions, drifted through interstellar space for billions of years, condensed into a solar system, survived planetary formation, assembled into organic chemistry, produced self-replicating molecules, evolved into multicellular life, and eventually arranged themselves into a configuration capable of asking why. That process took 13.8 billion years. Every step had a probability. Every probability could have failed. Every failure would have ended the chain. Logic says everything happens for a reason. But the universe offered no reason, only conditions, probabilities, and time. The fact that you exist is not guaranteed by any law. It is the result of an astronomically unlikely sequence of events that happen to run to completion. The universe doesn't care about your logic. It never did. It just kept running the numbers.